And here we go.
We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roger, Atlantic.
Water towers fly! Yes!
They go down to nominal.
Flighting outside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to attempt 2 for the launch of O3b mPOWER 9 and 10. I can't believe it's not a Starlink internet satellite because there's 2 internet satellites on board, neither of which have anything to do with SpaceX, but we'll talk about that in a minute when we get into today's stream. My name's Ryan Caton. Thank you very much for joining us for what is the second attempt due to a scrub yesterday evening. Alongside me, somebody who knows quite a lot about Falcon 9. You've heard his voice many times before for extreme durations. Alex, how you doing?
Me knowing about Falcon? No. That's a lie.
I love how that's the part you deny and not the fact that your answers are incredibly long.
Hey, you were also giving long answers yesterday. I watched that stream.
I'm feeling slightly called out now. Anyways, Alex is going to be joining me to talk about Falcon 9 for the next hour or so, depending. Well, we've got a 2-hour launch window and 20% go for launch weather, so we might be talking for a little bit longer than an hour. Also in the field for us today, we have DYs and on commentary Max Evans. Apparently, Max may be facing some connection difficulties for the moment, but we'll see if we can get Max in here very shortly. Either way, if you have any questions or comments for us, you know the drill by now. Tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight. We'll get to them. We'll get to them throughout the stream. Maybe Max is ready to join us now. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Check. Max, are you with us?
Hello, everybody. How do you have me?
There we go. We've got you 5x5, Max. Yeah. How's it doing, Max? Because well, you turned up on the behind the scenes camera yesterday. The weather was apparently 50% go, and they didn't go. And today apparently it's 20% go. So should we feel confident? Like, how's the weather feeling from your position at the press site?
Yeah, I had just gotten back from a trip, and the couple of delays that were in the countdown allowed me enough time to get straight from Orlando over here to the press site. So timing worked out in that one, although it didn't because obviously it aborted. But the Mark 1 eyeballs are telling us that that there are some clouds in the area, nothing too threatening immediately. Still lots of blue skies around, although thunderstorms could brew up at any moment, such as life here on in Central Florida during the summertime. So things could change, but for now, we are all keeping our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, we have a camera looking over the turn basin here. Very nice, picturesque shot of the turn basin here with Slick 40 in the background, some lovely foliage in the foreground. So yeah, I do have to say, if we do get a launch today, this shot is going to be one to look out for. So keep your eyes peeled, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Of course, this is the area where we've seen many vessels be turned around. What's it called, the turn basin for? It's a basin where they turn vessels around. We've seen barges, we've seen ships, we've seen components for SLS, the core stage. We've seen, of course, the external tank for the space shuttle, which was brought over on the Pegasus barge. We've seen back all the way to the Apollo era. We've seen bits for the Saturn V be unloaded at the turn basin. This basin has seen quite a few rockets over the last few decades, and yeah, fingers crossed it'll see a few more bigger rockets over the years to come. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, looking at you, Starship. Perhaps we will see some super heavy boosters and Starship ships floating in on a very big barge are being offloaded and heading to Launch Complex 39A. Fingers crossed within the next 12 months, Max. They're still working on 39A, but fingers crossed something like that happens pretty soon.
Yeah, I sure hope so. At least Q1 or Q2 of next year at the latest, hopefully. Obviously, they still have to complete the orbital launch mount or this. I guess we could just call it launch mount here in Florida, just like the Evolution Starbase. But they are currently building the new Starship launch mount over at Hangar X. That should hopefully be on the move to LC-39A, hopefully within the next couple of months or so, relative to the construction for Pad B in Starbase. That is how we are able to judge timelines off of it, even though they might be off a little bit. But yeah, hopefully sooner than later. And then vehicles should be arriving by barge at some point in the future. We still have no idea when, but I think it might be safe to say, based on the events of the Starship program in 2025, that a 2025 launch from Florida is probably off the table.
Yeah, it is looking that way, but a launch that, fingers crossed, will happen a bit sooner than the Starship launch is, of course, the mission we have today, O3b mPOWER 9 and 10, 2 satellites on board this Falcon 9. Alex, would you like to give us a little rundown of what we can expect to see, fingers crossed, in 50 minutes' time, should everything go to plan?
Yeah, so on today's launch, SpaceX is launching 2 of the O3b mPOWER satellites for SES. The O3b mPOWER satellites are part of a internet satellite constellation in medium Earth orbit. So people may have heard low Earth orbit or geostationary orbit. Those 2, low Earth orbit is sort of like between 200 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers. Geostationary orbit is roughly 36,000 kilometers above the ground. Medium Earth orbit lives in between. In this case, these satellites are going to a roughly 8,000 kilometer orbit around the equator. And so these satellites are not exactly going to be deployed into that final orbit. They're going to be sort of going in between. It's not entirely out there, but still very close to that final orbit. Now, for today's mission, in order to do that, Falcon 9 will be performing multiple burns of the second stage. First of all, the first stage will be heading east out of the Cape, right? And the second stage will be performing 1 burn to inject into a low Earth orbit, then another burn to sort of raise the highest point of the orbit, and then another burn, a third burn, to be able to both remove part of the inclination, but also increase again the orbit on the other side of the globe. So essentially, 2 orbit raising maneuvers, so to speak, right? And then they'll deploy those 2 satellites from the top of the Falcon 9. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, where is the second stage gonna go? Well, unlike some of the recent geostationary transfer orbits missions that we've seen, this one, despite being a lower orbit, it spends more energy in the sense of doing those 2 burns. Usually geosynchronous transfer orbits, they only do 1 transfer burn. This one is doing 2 transfer burns, which means higher orbit and higher energy, which means also they will not be returning that second stage for a deorbit burn and essentially a disposal. But that's more or less the profile for today's mission. It's going to be roughly 2 hours from liftoff to the last satellite deploying, and we'll see if today goes on time. Yesterday we had that 3-word hold right on the count. Hopefully today, please no. But other than that, it's a 2-hour window. So maybe they can find a slot in the weather, so to speak. Yesterday, for example, they had only like a coin toss chance of weather violation, 50%, and it went down to 20% probability of violation, aka it actually improved. The weather went better. So hopefully they get that sort of luck, right? That the weather improves and they're able to launch. But knock on wood, it is at the beginning of the window. Please, SpaceX and weather, Florida weather, please.
SpaceX has certainly launched in worse predictions. However, in order to be able to thread the needle, sometimes those delays are necessary in order to find the gap in the weather. But yeah, fingers crossed, the weather the weather conditions are sufficient for a launch in 47 minutes' time. The official forecast, I will say, from the 45th Weather Squadron, which is from the US Space Force, they're saying a 80% probability that the weather constraints will violate the conditions, which means 20% go, and in the event of a 24-hour delay, that improves by 10% to a 70% probability of violation. But the upper level wind shear, the booster recovery weather, and the solar activity, they're all low, and the primary concerns being the cumulus cloud rule, the lightning rule, and the surface electric field rule. So, Max, that's definitely some lightning rules that the 45th Weather Squadron are forecasting to keep an eye out for. Is there anything you're seeing right now, or is just the clouds look kind of greyish, but they're not like dark clouds, but they're just, it's not clear skies.
Yeah, there are certainly clouds pretty much in every direction we are looking, although nothing is looking immediately threatening, even though there was a few storms that rolled through earlier in the afternoon. There is still a risk of another wave or two around 6 p.m. tonight, so that is hopefully what SpaceX is going to be trying to launch beforehand, assuming that is still a threat come 45 minutes or so from now. But things are looking okay here. Again, nothing immediately threatening, and things I say are looking favorable for now, at least here at ground level. Not quite sure how things are downrange because we have no actual real-time update on that front, minus what we have from the 45th Weather Squadron. Hopefully, the drone ship out there is not going up and down too bad with the swells, but it looks like, assuming weather stays as it is now here at the launch site, things look like they're going to get off the ground. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we can see on the right-hand side that picture from one of our Cape cams located just at the by the beach, by Port Canaveral, and we can see the clouds kind of on the horizon, but there is a blue kind of patch forming right above the Space Coast. So fingers crossed, Falcon 9 will be able to launch through that blue patch on its way to space, and no big clouds get in the way. Yeah. Under 45 minutes to go now. We've been getting, I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised we're getting any support this stream considering what was happening on the Raptor side earlier. If you missed that, basically chat was trying to freeze Chris B. ChrisB.exe has stopped responding with the amount of support that was coming through on that Raptor side. But still, EJ, we have Birdhead Drift, thank you so much for the support. John, thank you very much for the support. And Dan with the €10 saying that they'll be doing the weather dance. Fingers crossed we keep the rain away. Max, speaking of the lightning, we have space news from MI asking what are the differences between a phase 1 warning and a phase 2 warning. So if you were unaware with the terminology, those are essentially two different kind of phases of weather watching, to my understanding, right?
Essentially, yeah. So basically here at the Kennedy Space Center and over at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, there is a set of parameters in place that will either put in place a phase 1 or a phase 2 lightning warning or watch. So essentially, phase 1 lightning is essentially keep your head on a swivel, keep a lookout. There is weather in the area, and there is a chance that it could get more severe in the very near future. Nothing too worrying, but although that is enough to certainly be, I guess, cautious of the weather. Phase 2 lightning warning is basically get indoors, don't be outside anymore because there is an immediate risk of lightning striking the nearby vicinity that you are currently in, and there are certainly lots of tall structures both at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and the Kennedy Space Center here that may attract lightning, including our camera gear out here in the middle of the press site field, which would be a rather unfortunate afternoon, morning, or evening, whatever it may be. Just TLDR, they are put in place to keep personnel safe and away from any inclement weather and lightning that could be in the area. Also, phase 2 lightning, any launch provider out on the pad may not enter any fueling operations at that point, because that would just pose too much of a danger to the vehicle itself and the systems, and that could potentially lead to a very bad day for many people, i.e., a rapid unscheduled disassembly. Hopefully, we never see that. We see that here with Falcon 9 over on the East Coast or the West Coast. But we hear announcements on both of those through a series of speakers placed all the way through or all throughout the Space Center through a loud series of alarms, and then a voice that comes over and tells us whether we are in a phase two warning, phase 1 watch, phase 2 or phase 1 warning, or a phase 2 warning. There is no phase 2 warning. It is just a phase 2 watch. It is just a phase 2 warning. So had a couple of those today, and it has certainly been a busy day for those watching the weather here, as tends to be the case here in the summertime in Florida. But things are currently looking okay, and we are crossing our fingers that it stays that way.
Indeed. And we have an interesting question here from Severin, who's always in chat with the good questions, asking what happened with the Tracers mission. And Alex, for those who missed it, SpaceX was trying for a launch from Vandenberg earlier today with NASA's Tracers mission on board. And, well, just like this mission yesterday, that one didn't exactly launch, did it?
Yeah, SpaceX sort of talked about FAA concerns about airspace or something like that. Yeah, they said, quote, due to FAA airspace concerns, end quote. So it's like, I don't know. At first, it seemed as if it was a wayward plane maybe in the area, but that sort of sounds more general than, hey, there's a plane in the range or something like that. So I don't know. I really have no idea what happened there, but it scrubbed. Like they were gonna give their go for launch, and instead of giving the go, they get the triple hold word. And so it's like, we'll see. It happened the same yesterday with this mission, right? When they were sort of, I was listening to their feed and everything, and trying to listen for the usual go for launch that happens after Falcon 9 startup, and it was not coming. It was not, and the guy did not say anything, and then suddenly we are 15 seconds from launch. We're getting close to that T-minus 10-second mark on the count, where they are not able to manually abort anymore, and then they said the hold as well. So I don't know what happened yesterday on this mission. I don't know what they mean by FAA airspace concerns on the Tracers mission from Vandenberg. They are two very weird holds that they had, but hopefully we don't have any of that today. I'm really, I'm really hopeful for today. I don't know. Maybe the weather will improve this time around. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure if we get any more information on what those FAA issues were, we'll of course share them on the socials. So make sure you're following wherever you like to get your social media engagementness, if that makes you know what I mean. Let's have a look through here, because we've got a couple of questions related to medium Earth orbit. But very quickly before we get to those questions, Alex, we are of course approaching T-minus 38 minutes if SpaceX is going for this specific time at the opening of the window. So would you like to very quickly run us through what we could potentially be seeing within the next 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, you're not wrong with the could there, because in T-minus 35 minutes, that's when the automated launch countdown sequence begins. Because before any of this, they can hold, they can recycle to another T0. After T-minus 35 minutes, the propellant load sequence begins. That is fixed in place. If they hold after that, they need to try the next day, right? And so they will try as much as they can to try to reserve that hold opportunity as much as they can, precisely if they see that there's not going to be a favorable attempt, essentially. So what we saw yesterday, for example, was that we were approaching T-minus 35 minutes, and then the SpaceX website would update with a new T0, and then again, right? So don't be surprised if we reach T-minus 35 again, and we see a delay of a few minutes, and then a few more minutes, and they adjust and whatnot. I don't want it to happen, but just be warned that it could happen, right? As you mentioned, it could be that we're going to be in less than 3 minutes into a propellant load sequence or not. Once that happens, though, they're going to be filling RP1 kerosene on both stages and liquid oxygen on the first stage. And approximately 3.5 minutes after that happens, we'd start seeing that frost on the liquid oxygen tank. So if the SpaceX doesn't confirm it, we're going to see that frost. Or if we don't see the frost, then it's probably going to be a clue that it's being delayed. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll be keeping our eye out either for frost, official SpaceX confirmation, whatever comes first. That's our indication on that there. But very briefly, before we hit that T-minus 35-minute mark to actually see if we know what's going on, we have a question here from Khaled asking, what is the advantage of medium Earth orbit and why isn't it a common orbit to launch to? Alex, of course, we have Starlinks pretty much going every couple of days to low Earth orbit. Most missions seem to go to low Earth orbit. We also have the big communication satellites going to geosynchronous orbit. Why do we not really see anything going to medium Earth orbit?
Well, there's a major disadvantage of medium Earth orbit, and that is the Van Allen belt. Shout out to University of Iowa, by the way, because Tracers is also doing that stuff. Anyways, and the thing is, the Van Allen belts being in medium Earth orbit means that your satellites need to be a little bit more secured, if you will, against that radiation, right? All of these paranoids about the conspiracy theories. Oh, we didn't go to the moon. When they went to the moon, they went through the Van Allen belts in like 1 hour. This will be permanently in the Van Allen belts, right? So your satellites need to be pretty much built to withstand that radiation environment. So for example, GPS satellites are in that sort of zone in space between low Earth orbit and geostationary, because that way you can see more of the Earth, but it's also not as far away as geostationary. You're essentially moving around relative to the ground, but you're also not close to the ground. So one of the advantages of medium Earth orbit is precisely that you don't need as many satellites as you would, for example, on a low Earth orbit. But it's still like not over one single part of the Earth, because if you put something on geostationary orbit, it's always above the same point on Earth. And if you want a satellite constellation, for example, you probably want multiple of these satellites around the globe, and that they can, communicate between each other, and they can also have connectivity with the ground. So, for example, this one will eventually have 13 satellites in medium Earth orbit instead of, say, 1 or 2 satellites in geo, or thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit. It's a bit of a trade-off there, but yeah.
And we are beyond 35 minutes now. I'm going to quickly refresh the SpaceX website. Doesn't look like we have any more information yet. So if we do get anything, of course, we will bring that to you. Something that we do have for you, though, if you were watching yesterday's stream, of course, this is going to be the second attempt for this launch, and whenever there happens to be the S word, which I won't say because I don't want to jinx it, on an SF stream, we have a little secret shop which opens up for 24 hours, and that secret shop closes in 7 minutes. So if you want to make sure that you don't want to miss out on the super secret exclusive Falcon 9 scrub shirt, that's so secret that I'm telling everybody about it right now. If you don't want to miss out, the shop closes in about 6 minutes time. So keep your eyes out. Or you could just, bet that the launch won't happen today, which of course I want the launch to happen today. But in case it does happen today, the shop closes in 6 minutes. So there you go. Just making sure everybody is aware. If you don't want to miss out, that is where the NSF secret shop is, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Refreshing the SpaceX website once again, because I'm very paranoid, and it still says that they're going for the opening of the window. So fingers crossed we'll see some frost or some official confirmation soon. My preview is a little bit low resolution, but Max Evans, I'm not sure if you have anything, maybe the Mark 1 eyeballs, which is able to provide us with a little bit more information.
I am keeping a very close look on my monitor to the left, which has the camera on it, and it looks like, if my eyes are not deceiving me, seeing the beginnings of frost forming on the bottom of the first stage liquid oxygen tank. So assuming that is what we all hope it is, that would be visual confirmation that prop load is underway. Maybe give it maybe 30 seconds to 1 more minute and see if that line actually begins to rise or build, or if we see any vapor coming off of that. But I believe I see frost. Alex, anybody else have a confirmation on it?
I will still give it another minute or so just to confirm, because usually when it's just beginning, it's a bit deceiving as well. So, but yeah, in a minute or so, it'll probably be more noticeable.
We also have a lot of heat haze to combat in Florida. You know, sometimes we see people in the chat and in the comments like, why is your feed so hazy? It's like, dude, it's Florida. You can't exactly get rid of it. Unfortunately, because of the humidity of the climate of Florida, the heat haze can sometimes be pretty difficult to fight. So that's why the shots appear to jiggle around. I can confirm Falcon 9 is not jiggling around. It is just the atmosphere, and it does appear that little white band, if you can see just above the foliage, is starting to get a little bit thicker. So that does appear to be the confirmation we will have that SpaceX is well into fueling operations right now with the first and second stages of Falcon 9. So yeah, either in 31 minutes time we'll either be launching into space, or I guess the secret shop will open again. Let's have a look through for some questions here. Of course, if you are new around here, first of all, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for NSF's live coverage. And we have a little bit of software running in the background for chat. So if you have any questions for us, tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight. Brings it into the queue, keeps everything nice and tidy, makes it easy for us to bring it onto the screen and read everybody's questions and comments out. Leonard has a really interesting question here, something that we've seen or discussed many a time on Starbase Update. But talking about Falcon 9, Alex, they're wondering if when the vehicle is detanked, can that fuel be reused? Are they able to recapture it, or does it just get wasted?
Yeah, they recapture it through the same lines that fuel the rocket. They just run in reverse. So, you know, the only losses that they have, so to speak, is from the liquid oxygen, but it's not on purpose. So the liquid oxygen is a cryogenic fluid, right? And it's very, very cold, but it also means that it boils off. And because it boils off, it means that escapes, it is vented out, and it's lost. So there's a tiny bit of that liquid oxygen that they cannot recover, but that is not on purpose. That is just essentially the physics of the whole thing. The kerosene, for example, is recovered entirely because it doesn't boil off. There's a tiny bit of vapors though, but just a tiny bit compared to the liquid oxygen. So yeah, that, for example, can be recovered completely.
And in the last few seconds, SpaceX has confirmed what we already knew by the frost line rising on Falcon 9, that they are indeed going for an attempt in 29 minutes' time. And apparently the weather conditions have improved from 20% favourable to 60% favourable for liftoff. So that's definitely the majority currently leaning towards a liftoff in terms of the weather forecast. So yeah, fingers crossed things will continue to improve and we will get that launch in 29 minutes time. Of course, the O3b mPOWER satellites are on board for SES. So yeah, it's always wonderful to have that official confirmation from SpaceX that they are indeed going for the launch. And I would like to welcome all of our viewers joining us on the Popular Science channel. This is Falcon 9 standing tall at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where they are getting ready to launch the O3b mPOWER 9 and 10 satellites. Two internet satellites. I can't believe it's not Starlink satellites being launched on top of a Falcon 9 today. Of course, Falcon 9 launched last week the Kuiper satellites for Amazon. They've launched the OneWeb satellites for Eutelsat. And now, they've launched some of these satellites for SES before. SES is a loyal customer to SpaceX. And yeah, they're about to launch, fingers crossed, in just under half an hour's time, 2 more internet satellites for SES into medium Earth orbit. And continuing the conversation we were having earlier about medium Earth orbit, James Atkinson, who is always in chat, asking the questions, one of those names we see all the time, is asking how many satellites are they putting into this constellation in MEO? So Alex, how big is the O3b mPOWER constellation, and how does it compare to some of the other internet constellations that there are?
Yeah, this one is going to have 13 satellites. Originally, it was supposed to be 11, but the first two, they were not super great. Keep in mind, these are built by Boeing. So, yeah. Anyways, sorry. And so the whole deal with the satellites is, as I mentioned before, it's a medium Earth orbit, so you don't need as many satellites, right? Low Earth orbit, you need lots of satellites to be able to cover the Earth. These ones can, because they are farther away, they you don't need as many. So originally, again, they were targeting 11. Now they're going with 13 because the first two were not as good. They had electrical issues on their buses, on their satellite buses, and so now it's just going to be those 13 around sort of the equator, around 8,000 kilometers away from Earth. So that means it's not as far away as geostationary satellites, for example, so it doesn't have as much latency, for example, but it also is close enough that then you can have, again, not super high latency, but then you don't need as many satellites as, for example, a low Earth orbit. So right now, 13 satellites that they're planning. Maybe they will launch a third generation. Remember, this is the second generation. They already had a first generation O3b constellation. At some point, maybe a third constellation might be in low Earth orbit. Who knows? But for the moment, medium Earth orbit.
And speaking of the fueling operations for Falcon 9, of course, fueling is well underway at this point, and fingers crossed everything goes smoothly for the next 25 minutes. But Space News from MI is back in chat asking, why can't Falcon 9 hold with fuel? Now, Max, yesterday, they went into the hold. They didn't exactly shout the S word on the stream, but they say hold, hold, hold. We see various other rockets, including, Starship, they're able to hold. Why can't Falcon 9 hold?
So essentially, Falcon 9 does not have any insulation on its tank structures, both for stage 1 and stage 2, albeit today's stage 2 is a little bit of an exemption there. Talk about that in a little bit, but both RP1 and liquid oxygen on Falcon 9's first stage are super chilled to a rather critical temperature. And because Falcon 9 has no insulation, once they begin propelled on the vehicle, the propellant on board will begin rising. It
does appear that Max's connection at the KSC press site is
itself,
a little bit sketchy
and they want to keep both our
I'll just cut in at this point, Max. Your connection seems to be dropping in and out ever so slightly. So fingers crossed we can get that resolved so the cameras also don't struggle. Alex, I'll toss that one back over to you if you would like to continue.
Yeah, it's just about the performance of the rocket. They use subcooled propellants, right? So both the liquid oxygen and the kerosene are at lower temperature that you will normally see them. The kerosene is loaded at -7 degrees Celsius, for example. The liquid oxygen, instead of being at its boiling point, which is usually around -180 degrees Celsius, it is -200. So it's about 20 degrees Celsius colder than usual. And what that allows them is to be able to pack more of it in the same volume of tanks. Essentially, it makes them denser. And so what that means is they can have more of the propellant in the same volume, in the same sort of space of tanks, right? And so that allows them to be able to launch more into orbit. If you don't use that, they lose, I think, roughly 20% of the performance capability, which is not ideal. It is not great. So that's why they cannot hold with the fuel. Falcon 9 is not great for that. Starship, however, you may have seen that it can hold for a few minutes, and that is because it's too large. There's so much propellant on it that it just doesn't have enough time to warm up, because there's so much of it that you can give it maybe 10-15 minutes and it's still good for launch. And there's plenty of performance and room for that to be boiled off a little bit here and there, right? And so it's a whole different beast.
Indeed, indeed. And Severin in chat again. A Falcon 9 mission, which is... we don't really know what the mission profile of it is going to be yet. But they're essentially asking, when might the second Polaris mission happen? Of course, Jared Isaacman was nominated to be the NASA administrator, is now no longer nominated to be the NASA administrator. Some things happened there, Max. What are your thoughts currently on the Polaris program? I'm not sure if we lost Max again. Max appears to have connection issues again, so Alex, take it away.
Okay. Well, Polaris, with the whole Jared situation that we had for the first 6 months of the year, I'm not too sure what's going to happen with that. I think we're going to have to wait and see if there's any news about that. He obviously removed himself from all that after President Trump nominated him for being NASA administrator, but then in May that was pulled out, so now he seems to be working on other things in the background. We'll see if that's Polaris or not, but I guess we'll have to see whether he comes back to spaceflight or not.
Indeed, it's one of those things we'll just have to wait and see what happens, because of course anyone who gets nominated to positions like that, they have to go through the whole conflict of interest thing, make sure they don't have any conflicts of interest really. And there was actually a letter which was published that just showed how much stuff, like had to basically just take his money out of as many things as possible, leave positions, go through all of that stuff, take money back and not pay for services to SpaceX and things like that. So yeah, it's just one of those things that anyone who is nominated to a position like that has to go through. And we have a few more questions coming in through chat. So do keep them coming as usual. I'm going to see if we can do another comms check very quickly with Max. Max, are you with us?
Sorry about that, everybody. I sure hope so, Ryan. How do you have me?
There we go. We've got you loud and clear, just in time for the T-minus 20-minute vent. If you would like to explain why Falcon 9 decides to, just start generating clouds in Florida.
Yeah, it's not quite like the RS-25s over at Stennis, but essentially what SpaceX has or is doing now is thermally conditioning the liquid oxygen lines inside of the transporter erector in preparation for stage 2 liquid oxygen loading, because the last thing you want to do is flow any sort of super chilled propellant or fluid through any bit of plumbing or material that is not either at or near its certain cryogenic temperature, because you risk damaging said plumbing and flash gassing the material into or from a fluid to a gas, in that which of course expands and can cause a headache and a bad day for many people, both on the ground and hopefully not around the vehicle. But this will take about 3.5 more minutes and we'll wrap up, or 2.5 more minutes I should say, and the vent will wrap up at about T-minus 16.5 minutes, and that will be a visual confirmation that SpaceX has commenced with stage 2 liquid oxygen loading. And the reason why you see that big cloud is the GOX, as it is now, gaseous oxygen coming out of the transporter erector, is meeting the rather hot and steamy air that is currently surrounding the rocket and all of the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as a whole, and that causes it to condense, and that is why you see that big puffy cloud now coming out of it. We will see it for about 2 more minutes, and then of course, as I said earlier, once that wraps up, that will be a good sign that stage 2 LOX load is underway.
And fingers crossed, things keep progressing in this direction all the way up until the launch. Of course, for those of you just joining us, if you were not previously aware, the forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron was saying that the probability of violation was 80%. That has now dropped to 40%. SpaceX now saying, with 30 minutes to go, so this information is about 12 minutes old at this point, but they're saying it's 60% favourable conditions for liftoff at the opening of today's launch window, which is at 21:12 UTC. That is 17:12 local time in Florida, or just over 17 minutes time. And we've gone in a little bit quite a lot of support in the last few minutes, so I should probably hit some of this whilst I can. Ethereal Swordsman saying that that chat just broke Chris on the Raptor side, so now it's my turn to break. And apparently we now have a Stoke Test Site 24/7 stream fund underway, so we'll see what comes of that. But thank you, Ethereal. 2 super chats. Thank you very much for the support here. We'll have to see what we can, see if we can get anything running up in Washington State. Captain Kirsch, thank you very much for the support as well. John in chat again with the support. Telstar86, one of those names we always see, asking if Crispy's brain has recovered from the Raptor side. I'm not quite sure. You're going to have to ask him. Al asking how many secret shops exist. There's just one secret shop, but it only when it opens is a secret. That's the point of a secret shop. And it's so secret that we tell you all about it. And Mark also getting some things from the store. Let's see if you've also got the secret I can't speak. Secret shirt. There we go. I believe this is it. Yeah, there we go. Falcon 9 scrub shirt. Thank you very much for the support, Mark. Ronnie gifting memberships in chat, and Bideford again, one of those names. We have so many people, recurring names in chat that we always see. Bideford, one of those especially. Thank you so much for all the support, as always, Bideford. And they're saying that they're praying that Jared still hangs in there and comes back to the Polaris missions. I do agree. I would love to see Polaris 2 and Polaris 3 fulfilled, especially Polaris 3 being the first crewed flight of Starship. That's going to be pretty epic, no matter who is on board for that flight. And, you know, if it is Jared Isaacman, that would be super, super cool. And we are approaching 15 minutes to go. We see a little bit more venting from the... was that from the strong back, Alex? I can't actually tell. It looked like it was coming from the vehicle, but at this distance, it's difficult to tell.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit from the strong back. There's probably some remnants there from the T-minus 20-minute vent.
The skies are looking a little bit more blue, but again, as we saw earlier, there was clouds on the horizon, but then a blue patch above. So fingers crossed things are acceptable for launch in 15 minutes' time.
They definitely seem to be targeting the opening of the window, so that's better than yesterday.
It's certainly, we don't have any delays whatsoever. So either SpaceX is like, YOLO, let's just run for the opening of the window and see if we can actually get this thing off the ground, or they actually think there's a pretty good chance that that they can launch today. Hopefully it's the latter. But if it's the former, well, thanks SpaceX for not making this stream 5 hours long. And we have a store question here from Michael. I will address this very quickly. They're asking if there are any updates on the Shrug patch. I pre-ordered, but I don't see they have started shipping yet. So as we said when they were available for purchase, it was the last Starship flight. What was that, the end of May now? Beginning of June? So just for everybody's information, as we said back then, the kind of production things were happening around July, and the shipping of those are of course expected around the beginning of August. So those were... the processing for the Shrug patch was a little bit different than we do for the normal patches, simply because we didn't know how many people wanted to buy. But then once we had that number, we could then go to the supplier and say, please make this many patches, which is why it's taking a little bit longer for the Shrug patch, just because it's that, it's that specialty item. So that's why the Shrug patch is taking a little bit longer than the other patches. But we should, fingers crossed, have that shipping within the next month or so. So, well, I say next month or so, we're nearly at the end of July already. So fingers crossed they'll be shipping soon from the warehouse. So yeah, and if you bought the Flight 9 patch and the Shrug patch at the same time in the same order like I did, your Flight 9 patch should come with your Shrug patch. So if that's something you're wondering about, they should come together. And of course, if you have any problems, contact us. Crispy will sort it. And we have Apocalypse Cow gifting 5 Red Team memberships, and Mr. Gamer IO with the support as well. So thank you very much, saying don't say the S word. Hi, it's cheesecake time. I'm not saying the S word. I am not saying the S word, I promise. I have not said it at all today. And I can confirm that. So here we go, approaching 12 minutes to go. Alex, what are some of the things in the count that have been going on in the last few minutes? Because, of course, we had the first stage sort of beginning its fueling operations around T-minus 35 minutes, but the second stage, it kind of lags behind a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it does get loaded with kerosene, so that should have wrapped up around the same time as the T-minus 20-minute event, right? But then liquid oxygen load begins at T-minus 16 minutes or so. And so that's when they started liquid oxygen load on that second stage. It should be already frosty. I'm starting to see some frost on the liquid oxygen tank on the second stage. So that should be progressing right now. First stage, kerosene load is also progressing. Liquid oxygen load is also progressing. Next thing should be in about 5 minutes from now. That'll be Falcon 9 beginning engine chill on the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage and getting those ready for ignition at T-minus 3 seconds. Other things that we may see, especially within 10 minutes of the launch, that'll be RP1 load on the first stage will wrap up, liquid oxygen load on both stages as well, the Stromback will retract, all of those things happening essentially within the last 7 minutes of the count, as you can see there on the timeline. So just a few more minutes, and hopefully we get a Falcon 9 ready for launch.
Indeed. And Max, speaking of launches, Creative Bytes TV is asking, when is the next Falcon 9 crew launch? That, of course, we expect from the neighbouring pad at 39A. What is the next crew launch, Max?
Indeed, 39A, July 31st at just after 12 p.m. Crew 11. So the next crew of 4 heading up to the International Space Station on July 31st, which is coming up rather quick now, considering it is already July 22nd. They should be arriving to the KSC in a few days' time, and we will get more information on that when we have it. But the 31st is coming up quick with Crew Dragon.
Of course, the crew, I'm not sure if they've already arrived at the Kennedy Space Center or if they'll be making their way there shortly, but of course, if you missed it last week, Sawyer got an opportunity to speak to the commander, the pilot, and one of the Japanese mission specialists for that mission. So if you missed that video over on Breaking Space, make sure to go and see it. It was a brilliant video as always. And along the same line with Dragon, we have Frank asking if the CRS-33 mission, if that has an estimated launch date yet. Alex, do we know when CRS-33, the next cargo resupply, is going to go up, or is that not really known yet?
We know it's somewhere around mid to late August, but the exact launch date has not been yet published. Maybe after Crew 11, that'll be the case, because it'll probably be some quick turnaround thing where they launch Crew 11, then Crew 10 comes back home early August, and then they prepare everything to launch CRS-33 to the International Space Station. I can imagine that one might have taken a little bit longer because it's debuting some things, but we'll talk about that when we get to that launch.
And of course, you mentioned there, before you send another dragon up, you kind of have to bring one home. And speaking of bringing dragons home, we of course have the brand new phone cases available on the shop. One of which is that awesome design of the dragons under its parachutes coming back to Earth. So if that is something you want on the back of your phone, as well as keeping your phone safe from dropping it, I, for one, am prone to dropping my phone on a regular occasion, so if you want to protect your phone and want a nice design to do it with, the new phone cases at shop.nasaspaceflight.com are, of course, an option for that. We also have the thermal protection tile pattern, which is inspired by the Starship tiles for the phone cases, so if you want your phone to look like it can survive a re-entry, it can't survive a re-entry. I should probably preface that. Please don't try and re-enter your iPhone, but that is also available on the shop.
I was going to say that
it's not rated for the thermal regime.
Yeah. The Crew Dragon one doesn't pop up parachutes. The one with the heat shield tiles, right? That one does not protect your phone if it falls from orbit. That sort of stuff doesn't happen, but it's still a nice case.
Yeah, it will, the largest drop it'll protect your phone from is probably a few meters, probably a few feet. I would exactly say from 100 kilometers. But yeah, shop.nasaspaceflight.com if that is something you are interested in. And of course, the secret shop is now closed. So sorry, everyone, unless I'm not going to say the word.
No,
The secret shop is now
don't.
closed.
There you go.
Don't do it.
So we are now approaching T-minus 7 minutes on the count. And Alex, I believe that is when the engines start to chill down prior to the launch. If you would like to explain to the wonderful boys and girls watching why Falcon 9 chills its engines.
Yeah, just a few seconds from now, that'll be beginning on the first stage. So what they do is, Merlin has these very fast pumps with very fast spinning wheels and whatnot, right? That pump the liquid oxygen through. And what you don't want is to run those pumps for the first time at, ambient temperature. And now you pull through, you let flow a lot of that liquid oxygen through and instantly shock your material, right? And flash boil off the oxygen. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong if you were to do that. So in preparation for that, they opened the pre-valves on the tanks. They let some of that liquid oxygen already flow through the engines. There are ports where, that oxygen turns into a gas and on the pump. There are ports that allow that gaseous oxygen to escape the engines. They are vented off board, and so they are essentially conditioned for that process of ignition at T-minus 3 seconds. So hopefully we get a launch and a perfect engine ignition here in just a little bit over 6 minutes from now. Just heard RP1 load is complete on the first stage.
Wonderful. And Max, we can see the clouds on the horizon, but there is a blue patch opening up above Falcon 9. So at this point, we will say farewell for the time being, and fingers crossed we get that launch in 6 minutes' time.
Indeed, there's still lots of blue skies around, but it is indeed that time, everybody. So they're going for it. Good luck, and I'll see y'all on the other side.
Fingers crossed. 5 minutes, 45 seconds left in the count. Of course, at this point, if there are any holds in the count, Falcon 9 is unable to recycle since we're already into propellant load for today. So right now, SpaceX has locked into this 21:12 and 0 seconds UTC liftoff time. And unless it's my imagination, the conditions for the heat haze appear to have improved ever so slightly from the beginning of the stream. So fingers crossed we get some beautiful views as Falcon 9 lifts off into the sky. And very briefly there, we also had that onboard shot from the drone ship for today's mission, which is just read the instructions. That's been stationed in the Atlantic Ocean for a little while now, a few hours, a couple of days. And it did look a little bit rainy, but fingers crossed the recovery weather is acceptable. Of course, SpaceX want to be able to bring this booster back. This is booster B1090. It's relatively young in the fleet compared to some of the older boosters. It's only flown 5 missions prior to this one. And Alex, it actually flew the previous SES mission, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it actually launched the previous O3b mPOWER mission. Ironically, that was O3b mPOWER E, as it was called. This one is O3b mPOWER D. So it's a bit of a, the opposite order, I guess. But yeah, there you can see some of that history. Just 5 flights. It also launched Crew 10, Bandwagon 3, and 2 Starlink missions, 667 and 1018. And hopefully, after this mission, it will have launched a total of 64 satellites. Now, one of the things that you have seen, as we were mentioning, that was the drone ship recovery vessel. Just read the instructions. That's going to be stationed roughly 600 to 700 kilometers downrange. It is out there waiting for that booster to land on its deck. You may have also seen there's not just rain, but also a deluge system on that drone ship. It's the only one equipped with that. So if we get to this launch and we get to the landing, just watch out for that deluge as well. The ferrying vessels for today have flown for it's their 21st flight and their 9th flight. And so it's going to be recovered by ferry recovery vessel Bob. So lots of different things here going on, but as you can see, we are just over 3 minutes to go. The Stromback has retracted just a little bit in preparation for liftoff, and they're closing out liquid oxygen load on both stages. So just last few minutes of the count here.
That fairing recovery is really the unsung hero of the Falcon program, because literally the only thing SpaceX doesn't get back from a fully recoverable Falcon 9 mission is the second stage and the fuel they used to power the rocket. Like, they literally get everything back. The first stage comes back to land on Earth. The fairings get fished out of the ocean after they glide down onto the parafoils. I mean, and of course they can use the launch pad again, because, you know, Slick 40, 1309A, Slick 4 East, they're equipped with appropriate deluge systems in order to protect the pad infrastructure, something we may have seen a couple of years ago. When that is not the case, how your launch pad can suddenly disintegrate beneath you. Anyways, moving on to a hopefully successful launch in 2.5 minutes time. It's we can of course see the condensation on the outside of Falcon 9. As Alex mentioned a moment ago, that strong back has retracted to its kind of preliminary standby position that will swing back all the way back at T0 when the vehicle lifts off, fingers crossed. And we are now entering the pointy end of the count here, where things start to happen quite a bit quickly. So Alex, very briefly, what are some of the things we can expect over the next couple of minutes?
Yeah, so I just heard a call out, stage 2 LOX load is complete. So Falcon 9 is fully loaded with propellants right now for launch. We see the Stromback vent coming back. That is the final closeouts that they do. They vent out some of that liquid oxygen, some of the remaining propellant on the lines. They vent out some of the pressurization systems on the Stromback as well, some of those gas closeouts as well. And so that's the final few things. At T-minus 1 minute, the onboard computers will take control of the count. Just on that last few minute, essentially, they do all of these several thousands of checkouts on all of the systems on the vehicle, making sure that everything is ready for liftoff. And hopefully, this time around, we're going to get a go from the launch director a few seconds later. Let's hope for that.
Indeed, approaching 60 seconds left in the countdown, the final 60 seconds before we reach launch commit at T0. Here we go. So fingers crossed, everything's looking good. The onboard computers will start to take over the countdown, and fingers crossed, in a few seconds' time, the launch director will verify that SpaceX are indeed go for launch. That's something we didn't get in the Tracers mission earlier today from Vandenberg. It's something we didn't get on the first attempt for this launch yesterday. However, with 35 seconds to go, there we go. That's the call out we wanted from SpaceX. We've already got them further than we did yesterday. Fingers crossed that continues over the next 25 seconds. One little last puff from Falcon 9 there just before it launches in 20 seconds time. We'll keep an eye out for the ignition of those 9 million 1D engines, and fingers crossed we'll see that big cloud of steam start to rise as it interacts with the deluge system that protects the launch pad. Here we go, 5 seconds left in the count, everybody. And there is ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9, which is off and away with O3b mPOWER 9 and 10. It's cleared the tower and it's on its way to space. Beautiful shot rising above Slick 40 and the turn basin, and we'll listen in for the roar of those 9 Merlin engines. Holy vapor cone, that was incredible as Falcon 9 rises through the atmosphere. We're approaching max Q. Oh, look at it go through the clouds. That was incredible. Here we go, through max Q, Falcon 9 rising into space. Maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, and the engines will now throttle back up to full power as Falcon 9 continues on its way to space. That was an absolutely beautiful launch, apart from the 10 seconds after it got into the cloud layer, which was very poorly timed from the clouds, but we'll forgive the clouds because that was an incredible ascent through the clouds, literally pushing the air out of the rocket's way, and that vapor cone was absolutely beautiful. I think that's one of the biggest vapor cones I've ever seen for any rocket launch ever. That was just incredible shots, and we are approaching main engine cutoff in about 30 seconds time. You can see the plume starting to expand there beneath the first stage, because as the vehicle gets higher and higher, the atmosphere gets thinner and thinner. There's less pressure pushing in on that rocket exhaust, which means naturally it will get wider and wider. It's a little bit difficult to see, of course. Those low-level clouds are in the way. You can see they're on board with Falcon 9. Those clouds over Florida are getting in the way of our ground cameras, unfortunately. But the onboard cameras, of course, have a good shot as always. Coming up on MECO. And we should see the separation of the first and second stages. Here they go. And ignition on the right-hand side of that Merlin vacuum engine. And there we go. The second stage is now burning its way to the initial parking orbit for this mission. That engine will cut off at approximately 7 minutes and 51 seconds into flight. The first stage, B1090, is now flipping 180 degrees. It's extending its grid fins, and it is now heading back to Earth.
We'll be coming up on fairing separation very shortly.
Those grid fins now fully deployed. If you see anything flying around, let's keep an eye out for the fairings. I was just going to say, if we see anything flying around, don't worry, it's usually just a little bit of ice. And there we go. Unfortunate camera placement for the second stage on this mission, but there you go. You can see it getting a little bit brighter. The fairing, there you go, from looking on from the engine shot, the fairings falling back to Earth. Those will re-enter the atmosphere and glide under parafoil down to the ocean surface, where they will be scooped up by recovery vessel Bob.
Yeah, these satellites need a special adapter for them to be able to be launched, right? And so that adapter is so wide that the usual camera placement, it just cannot see the payload essentially, or any of the surroundings. So it's just looking at the payload adapter.
260 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 first stage still coasting up to its apogee. As you can see, the speed will get a little bit lower because it's still carrying all the momentum from its ride uphill, and it will soon start to fall back down to Earth. But it's still on the ride uphill a little bit, and it looks like we've just passed apogee now, so that speed is increasing and the altitude is now decreasing on the first stage. Of course, the second stage, it is burning its engines, it's continuing up into orbit. It is now approaching 150 kilometers in altitude, nearly 12,000 kilometers an hour in velocity. Max Evans, that vapor cone, holy moly.
That vapor cone, Ryan. That vapor cone, or I should say vapor cones. There were three separate acts there, it looked like. I guess the atmosphere was just right for Falcon 9 to just put on an absolute show as it was beginning to transition into supersonic speeds today. Holy moly, that was incredible.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best vapor cones I have ever seen of any rocket launch ever, and that's even considering some of the vapor cones we've got from shuttle launches. Like, I think that's up there. I think that's a severe rivalry. Chris B isn't going to like me saying this, but I think that's a proper vapor cone rivalry right there with the with the shuttle vapor cone and the Falcon 9 vapor cone.
I'd have to agree. Yeah, there were literally three separate occasions where it came up. First, it was small, then it was a distinct cone, and then beyond that, the entire thing just completely wrapped around the entire rocket itself. It was absolutely beautiful.
We're about 20 seconds away now from that entry burn starting on the first stage. That is when one engine ignites, then two more engines ignite, and then we dip back down to one Merlin engine for the entry burn there as Falcon 9 prepares to enter the Earth's atmosphere. Super heavy, it doesn't do an entry burn, and we can see the fruit of that labor because the aft section glows bright orange when it gets to the re-entry portion of flight. But here we go, ignition of one Merlin engine. We should see the two extras, there they go as well, and we see that line form in the exhaust plume for that entry. Falcon 9 slowing itself down so it doesn't burn itself up. Here we go, decelerating now through 5,400, 300, 200, 100. Yeah, we're nearly reaching it, kilometers per hour. But of course, it's still falling, so the speed starts to increase again. Very briefly, you can see the grid fins starting to move a little bit there as they start to bite the atmosphere as the atmosphere gets thicker, but the speed will now start to decrease because we've reached the thicker parts of the atmosphere where the drag is increasing on the vehicle at a very high rate, and the speed is starting to bleed off because Falcon 9 is literally forcing itself to slow down with that drag in the atmosphere. It's no longer running its engines, it's literally just using atmospheric drag to slow itself down and steer itself towards the drone ship. Just read the instructions stationed in the Atlantic Ocean, and we're approaching that cloud layer now as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing whatever we get through the grid fins. Looks like we just lost signal there from that camera momentarily. Still got telemetry from the first stage though. It's descending through 10 kilometers in altitude now. The second stage engine is actually going to shut off before we get to that landing burn, so let's keep an eye out for Seco on the right hand side with that second stage. And it looks like the grid fins are now going through the atmosphere. Let's keep an eye out for Seco.
That view.
There's Seco. Hopefully we run back to the booster very quickly because I want to see those grid fins going through the atmosphere. Fingers crossed as the vehicle... Here we go. Here's the booster. Now descending towards the Atlantic Ocean. That engine, middle Merlin engine, is now ignited. There we go. We can see, just read the instructions just next to the left-hand grid fin there. And Falcon 9 slowing itself down, approaching the deck of the drone ship. Should see the landing legs deploy momentarily. We can see that water deluge system activated on the deck of just read the instructions. There is the exhaust plume arriving on the drone ship, and there is the booster arriving on the drone ship, and that is another successful landing for booster B1090. It can add O3b mPOWER 9 and 10 to its belt. That was a very pretty launch. You know, if we had to have clouds, I would say that was probably the best launch views we were going to get with those clouds. The vapor cones on the way up, the grid fins interacting with the atmosphere on the way down. That was absolutely incredible. And that, of course, an empty launch pad. Slick 40 has done its job. And these two internet satellites for SES are on their way to medium Earth orbit. I still think SpaceX should have some sort of adjustable second stage camera because the payload adapter does get in the way just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I'm not sure if my eyes were playing games with me or not. There was quite a bit of RCS in the last bit of the landing burn there on before, like right before it met the drone ship. I noticed a bit of RCS action in between the grid fins from the onboard camera of the first stage. Can't really say I've noticed that on other launches. Granted, most other launches have been at night, and RCS would be rather difficult to see at night. But that also looked like a pretty intense approach.
Yeah, the vehicle really starts to shudder. I think it's the best terminology for it as it gets through into the thicker parts of the atmosphere there. It's just arriving so quickly. It's literally having to force the air out of its way, which is why there's so much atmospheric drag, which is slowing it down at that portion of the flight. The grid fins, of course, doing their job there as well. And there were some questions earlier about the deployment of this satellite. There are 2 more burns to come, I believe, Alex, for that second stage, because the vehicle isn't actually in medium Earth orbit yet, is it?
Yeah, right now it's in low Earth orbit, as you can see there on the map. So they need another burn to raise the orbit a little bit. That should happen at 26 minutes into the mission, and then another one around 1 hour and 50 minutes into the mission. That'll be the other one that sort of gets them a little bit even closer to medium Earth orbit. But that is pretty much what that second stage has in store for the next couple of hours. Those satellites should be deploying, the last one at T plus 2 hours. So that's going to be a long ways away.
Yeah, not even SpaceX is staying alive for that one, ladies and gents.
Well, it's also because they don't have the views, and so it's, yeah.
I'm not sure whether Jay is preparing replays or whether that camera... Yep, it appears that camera had frozen. So no, don't worry, the Falcon 9 has not returned to Slick 40. That was just a bit of a frozen feed there. But there you go, that is Slick 40 very much live after the launch of O3b mPOWER 9 and 10. And at least from our angle here at the press site, not the crest site, that's something completely different. At least from our angle here, The pad looks to be in good condition, and soon we should see that strong back unretracting as it moves back into the vertical position, as it usually does as SpaceX prepares to roll it back to the horizontal integration facility to launch yet another Falcon 9 in probably, I don't know, 48 hours, knowing SpaceX. Alex, do we know what the next launch from Slick 40 is going to be yet?
Yeah, that'll be Starlink 1026. Of course, it's a Starlink. And that's going to be at a very late time of the day. That's 4:50 a.m. Eastern. So, yeah, get ready for that. That should be on Friday, by the way.
Yeah,
So
wonderful
like
time
Thursday
of day,
night,
you know.
Friday morning.
Wonderful time of day, those late night Starlinks. Max, I'm sure you're a big fan of those.
It's number one fan, man. That's just the name of the game down here. 5 a.m. That's pretty rough. I mean that's at that hour pretty much we have to debate whether or not to get any sleep at all to make it worth waking up so early to get ready for a 4:50 or 5 a.m. T0. But 5 a.m. does put us awfully close to sunrise at that point, within about 70 or 80 minutes. So if this Starlink does what is so common for Starlinks to do, pushing into the window, we could get a rather beautiful jellyfish effect as Falcon 9 ascends, assuming the clouds play ball. So rather hoping for that. We haven't had one of those on the East Coast in quite a while.
And speaking of launch pads, Severin Fisher asking, do you think they'll build more Falcon 9 launch sites or drone ships? Alex, I'll throw this to you first because, to my understanding, Space Launch Complex 6 in Vandenberg, we might be seeing some Falcon 9s from there at some point, perhaps?
Yep, they're going to be putting there a launch pad for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. They're already in the environmental sort of paperwork stuff. They began that last year, and they're sort of now in the process of going through the draft, getting all of the comments and whatnot. That should probably be fully finalized by the end of this year. Hopefully a little bit earlier than that, sort of in the fall timeframe. And then they'll begin all of the works out there by the end of the year, beginning of next year, and hopefully a first launch a little bit, after that. We'll see how a little bit after that it'll be, but we'll see. It's scheduled for next year to be the first launch from there.
And of course, they only have one drone ship on the west coast, which is, of course, I Still Love You. So whether SpaceX would want to go on undertake another construction of a drone ship when they have Starship around the corner, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but I wouldn't rule it either way. Max, it does. Maybe this is just me, but it looks as if the wind might be picking up a little bit. Are the weather conditions now deteriorating on your end?
I think deteriorating might be a strong-ish word. I mean, there is some overcast cloud cover coming over. Nothing too threatening at the moment. I've been keeping an eye on the radar. Nothing that we have to worry about immediately. But just typical weather patterns here in Florida. It can change every 2 to 3 minutes. That's unfortunately just how it is in the summertime. But the rocket is off the ground, so not much to worry about there, and we don't have to worry about this mission scrubbing, and we can now say that because the Falcon 9 has left the launch pad. So.
It's launched.
Yeah, it's launched. the effect is nulled there. So, yeah, a bit cloudy, a bit breezy here, but it was very warm today, so that breeze does feel quite nice. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I would like a bit of a breeze in my office right now, to be completely honest with you, because I am going to complain because I have to have the door shut and the window shut and no fans on or anything in order to make sure that my audio sounds wonderful, and it's like 30 degrees C in here and it is a bit warm. I will end my complaint there because Max will be like, that's not warm, that's really cold. I wear like 12 layers in that temperatures because it's warm because Florida, or something like that. That's my Max impression, ladies and gentlemen, any day of the week. There you go.
A+.
Thank you very much. During the launch, we also got some support. So, Mr. Gamer.io, thank you very much. And Anonymous on the store They've bought the TPS phone case. They're saying, Roger that. I understand this phone case will help protect my phone during a fall from orbit. No, it won't. For legal reasons, this phone case is not rated for orbital re-entry. There you go. Dan, thank you very much for the €10 support there. John, again, with the support. Thank you very much. Dimez is coming back. We saw you in chat yesterday. Thank you very much, Dimez, saying the first launch watched from Jetty Park, which is right next to our fleet cam replay here. Amazing stuff. Thank you all for the coverage over the years. You're very welcome, Dimez. And fingers crossed your view looked something similar to this from one of our fleet cams looking over Port Canaveral there of this vehicle launching. This from the press site, of course. Bideford in chat again, gifting 5 Red Team memberships and the $10 super. Thank you very much for your support, Bideford, as always. T-Hawk saying, shout out to the McGregor team. Over the course of that launch, they static-fied a Merlin and shipped out a Falcon 9 Stage 2. The McGregor is always doing stuff. You know, we often, you know, obviously the majority of our audience is hanging out in Starbase Live most of the time. And I see in chat people like, when's the next test? When's the next launch? If you guys want to see loads of Raptor tests and Merlin tests and Falcon tests, like literally every day, multiple per day, go watch McGregor Live. McGregor Live is awesome. We have cameras scattered across central Texas there, keeping an eye on the McGregor test site, from the Raptor tests to the Falcon 9 first stage static fires. You know, every time SpaceX manufactures a brand new Falcon 9 booster, they roll it out, ship it to McGregor, put it vertical, and static fire it. So if you want to see tests like that, literally multiple times per day, make sure to check out McGregor Live. And Linda has gone on a shopping spree on the store. Thank you very much for your support there, Linda, saying making this order for my grandson's 9th birthday. Well, fingers crossed he enjoys everything you have purchased. We'll get some the Starship Assembly shirt. That's pretty cool. Spaceport 404, that's always a good one as well. Some of the classic merch items on here as well. So thank you very much for the support, Linda. It is greatly appreciated, as always, from everybody. And on the left side of the screen right now, Max, I believe we have your track from the launch. Very pretty ascent for the moment, but then the clouds get in the way a little bit.
Just a little bit. We were able to predict roughly where it was going to exit, so we headed back pretty quick. But we have audio incoming, so here we go.
So there's one vapor cone, there's the other vapor cone, and there's the third one. I mean, look at that. And I think this is technically like a 3.5 vapor cone, if I remember correctly. As it punches, there you go.
Yep, one more.
As it punches through that final cloud layer there. I mean, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, so 4 separate acts there. That is the lovely thing about a vehicle going or transitioning into supersonic speeds with that shockwave forming at the very front. So always pretty.
Just listening to those final few moments of that kerosene crackle from those Merlin 1Ds as the vehicle ascended into the atmosphere approximately 20 minutes ago. Oh, we've also got the turn basin shot. This was a very pretty shot. Good framing, Max. This was very pretty.
Thank you very much. It's something different, something new.
See the vehicle lifting off in the background there. Got that classic exhaust reflection on the water. We've seen that many a time with all of the shuttle launches over the years. A few years ago, more like, feel old yet? But there you go. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for today's live launch coverage of O3b mPOWER 9 and 10, which is now on its way to medium Earth orbit. First of all, Max, thank you very much for rolling out to the field and providing us with some wonderful views and wonderful commentary.
It is a pleasure as always, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to hang out with us. And stay tuned, because we have another 4 or 5 a.m. Starlink coming up in just a few days, so come hang out there too.
Indeed. And also out in the field for us today was D Wise, who was also setting up some wonderful camera angles and is going to be providing us with a slow-mo replay at the end of the stream in a few moments' time, so stick around for that. Thank you very much, as always, D. And we also had alongside me Alex. Thank you very much for providing us with your answers, as always.
It's a mere pleasure, and of course, 2.5 days from now, another Starlink launch. Same pad, same channel.
But not the same time. It's at a horrible time
Not
of
the
day,
same time.
and I will definitely be sleeping through it. And of course, in the background, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, putting the replays. What else has he done? Cutting the cameras. Jay Keegan, thank you very much for supporting this stream in the background, as always, doing a wonderful job. And we also had Gage supporting Space Coast Live, pointing some of our robotic assets down at the Cape, which is, of course, only possible because of all of the support that you guys provide us with. So thank you for all of that. Again, as always, we couldn't do it without you. And with that, as Alex and Max said, a couple more days' time, we'll see a Starlink launch from this very pad. But until then, my name's been Ryan Caton. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers, fly!
Flight downside FTE off. Say again, FTE off.
It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Décollage! Put that in the big bag, Tingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?